One of the topics I've been dying to talk to you about, and from looking at these questions, I really should have put it at the front. But that's my fault because I'm stupid and I'm ugly and I smell. But as a trainer, you've obviously got a better perspective on the business than most people. But the big conversation topic that seems to be happening these days is intergender wrestling, and for me personally, I think that's a mistake waiting to happen because for all you need to do is somebody going for like a body slam and their hand accidentally goes in the wrong place, and next thing you know, you've got a like a Me Too lawsuit coming up. So, what do you think about the growth of intergender wrestling?
Um, I mean, you can do it, but it has to be done in the right way. I mean, you can do anything in the ring as long as it's done in the right way. Um, but you've got to be so careful, um, you know. And the reason that you've got to be so careful is not, not so much for the Me Too stuff. Um, you need to be careful because for the general audience, it quite honestly is still a man versus a woman, and so you've got to be uh, very creative in the way you approach it, and so that it's understandable and relatable and believable to the general audience, not to a wrestling audience, but to the general audience, which is really what you always want to try to market yourself to, because there's more of a general audience than there is of just a wrestling audience. Um, and, uh, you know, at the end of the day, society has been taught or understands that, and quite honestly, in reality, a woman could be is probably without there are a lot of women I know that are stronger, tougher, without a question or a doubt than most of the guys in the wrestling business. And in a real fight, I wouldn't want to get in a real fight with them in any way. But uh, think of it like this. Let's take the sex out of it. Let's take it. It's two men. Okay. Um, but it's two men, but one's 6'7" and is 350 pounds of just meat. Okay, and the other guy is 5'7" and about 210 pounds. Should that guy that weighs 210 pounds walk straight across the ring and just lock up with that 350-pound, 6'7" guy?
Hmm.
He shouldn't, because it doesn't make sense. If it were real, he would never have done that. Am I correct?
Oh,
He'd be
definitely.
trying. He'd be trying everything he could to get a leg, get him off his feet, get around behind him to get some kind of control, take his head, something. You understand?
Oh
And
yeah.
he'd never come straight at him. He'd always try to shoot an angle. He'd always try to come in from from the side. He'd never in a straight line, because you're looking at the two of them, and you just by visualizing them assume that who the guy that's 6'7" and has 350 pounds has got the physical advantage. Am I not correct?
Definitely.
Now, we don't know that the 5'7", 210-pound guy is actually competes on a regular basis in strongman competitions, and that he, in reality, is an accomplished jiu-jitsu fighter. And in reality, he could take this 350-pound guy, 6'7", and beat the living shit out of him at any point in time he wanted to. Okay,
Oh yeah.
but we're not talking reality. We're talking wrestling, and we're talking what visually people in the audience can see. So now we have to work accordingly based on what the audience visually can see. Do you understand? Now they see and understand that one guy is physically bigger and looks like he has the upper hand. So we have to act accordingly. And the same goes for the big guy. The big guy, if he's working with a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", and he's 270, 290, big guy can do more things to his opponent because they're close to the same size. But now, if the big guy goes in there and he grabs 5'7", 210-pound guy, throws him in the turnbuckle right out of the gate, and punches him 10 times, and doesn't knock that guy out, or doesn't just haul off and throw him to the mat and beat him, what do you think?
Yeah, you think this is fake?
Correct. So, in those situations, and where based on societal attitudes or beliefs with the general audience, they're going to assume, and it could be completely wrong, that a man is going to be, stronger than a woman. Again, we don't know. She could be a CrossFit competitor, or she could be, a strong woman competitor. Same thing, and could be a master of jiu-jitsu and could probably beat the living shit out of this guy. But visually, we have to take the path of least resistance, and we have to then, work creatively. The problem with the intergender matches that they do is that they work like they're both, the same size and they're the same weight. And whether it's a man and a woman, or it's two guys, or even if it's two girls, if one has a visual upper hand on the other, then you have to work accordingly and be more creative than that stupid 7-step formula match approach that everyone takes. That's why the intergender doesn't work, is because they lack the creativity and the imagination to try to make it as believable as possible. The term work is misused so badly these days. Everybody, they're an incredible worker. They're an incredible worker. No, they're not. They're an incredible performer, but they're not an incredible worker. A worker is a person who works the audience. To work an audience is to allow an audience, or a person, if you're working an individual, to believe a lie, something that's not real. And the only thing that's not real about professional wrestling, and this may be a shock to you and to everyone else out there, the only singular thing that is fake about professional wrestling is that the outcome is predetermined. It's the intent behind what we do. So when we're out there, we're trying to convince you, the audience, that what we're doing is with the intent of trying to win and not lose. Not that we're trying to make, because that's the big mistake everyone makes these days. They think that they need to convince you that what they do is real. And you will never believe it in a million years that what they do is real. No matter how hard you hit your opponent, no matter how big the bump is, you won't believe it. You know why you won't believe it? Because you've never done it. You've never experienced it. You think that ring is a trampoline or a mattress. It is anything but. Every time a person's body strikes it, they hit with the force equivalent to a 22-mile-per-hour car accident. You don't realize that because you don't understand or relate to what's happening physically in the ring. Much like MMA, UFC, they've changed the rules purposely to try to drive the fights more to stay on their feet so they can throw more strikes. Because if you pay attention and listen to the audience, you lose them a lot when they go down to the mat because they can't appreciate what's happening. Visually, they can see the strikes and understand it better and therefore relate to it better and thus react more appropriately. The same goes in wrestling. You're never, ever selling them on what you do. You're always selling who you are and why you do it. And thus, when it comes to a bigger guy versus a smaller guy, a bigger girl versus a smaller girl, a guy versus a girl, you have to work based on who you are and then why you're doing what you're doing. Understand, if you had a real competitive situation, here's the idea that nobody gets. If it were real, That would mean that if you win, you make money. You understand that concept?
Oh
If
yeah.
you lose, you don't make money, meaning you can't pay rent, you can't afford your headphones, you can't buy that chair. You understand? So if you're standing across the ring and you are a 270-pound professional athlete whose livelihood depends on whether or not they beat the other person, how aggressive would you be? How intent would you be? You understand? Now, so you understand the real concept of professional wrestling. When you
Oh yeah.
stand in the ring against your opponent, when you're standing across from your opponent, once that bell rings, can walk across the ring and physically assault you. They can do things to you that would get them arrested in any country and put in jail and would be put in prison for what they could potentially do to you. That's legit. And they can't even be stopped in the match unless the referee stops them for breaking a rule or you get to the ropes. Otherwise, they have free reign to physically assault you. Now, if you're a woman or you're a smaller man and you're standing across the ring from somebody who is physically bigger than you, you're going to tell me that if it were legit, you'd walk straight across the ring and let that person get their hands on you?
Exactly. You'd be dodging them at all chances.
Correct. And now you can start to tell a story and you can start to interact and react and start to work the audience and make them buy into and believe in what you're doing, which is the intent behind what you're doing, not just the physical action. You understand?
Oh
and,
yeah.
and that guy, these guys that, no matter where you're at in the world, it's still not societally acceptable to strike a woman. And, if you do, it gets you the wrong kind of heat. It gets you that turn the channel heat. And these guys that are bumping these girls and thinking that it gets them over could not be more mistaken. I mean, that's a huge, huge mistake. I made that mistake back in ECW. Paul had me bumping Chastity, Paul Diamond's valet, and really, I should have known better. I shouldn't have done it. It got a great reaction from that audience, but that was a marginal audience. And keep that in mind. You can do whatever you want. I mean, it's professional wrestling. You're free to do whatever you want. But when you do certain things, you're marginalizing your product. Your product is you. So you're now only going to appeal to a very small or marginal size audience as opposed to a broader or grander audience. Would you rather be ECW or would you rather be WWE?
WWE, please.
Right. Because WWE is on a worldwide platform and it makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year and is ultra successful. And, would you rather be The Rock or would you rather be, I can't think of a name, you know what I mean? You want to try to use that platform to make yourself an attraction as much as possible to as large an audience as possible, because that's where the most opportunities are going to lie. I say this all the time. I try so that people understand. I did the Job Squad, and it was an inside joke, and wrestling fans got it, and they understood it. I made T-shirts. I did really well. I made a lot of money in a very short amount of time, and in fact, I made so much money that WWE took notice, and when I went back, they licensed the Job Squad from me. They wanted to sell them. Problem was, only wrestling fans got it, and they didn't know how to sell it to the average person so that the average person would understand it and then want to buy it. And meanwhile, Stone Cold Steve Austin made shirts that any guy would understand and relate to. It was a smoking skull. It's a 316. And those T-shirts were in every retail outlet all over the country. So would you rather market yourself to just the wrestling audience, i.e. the Job Squad shirts, and make a lot of money, or would you rather be Steve Austin and market yourself to the general audience and make life-changing money?
The biggest possible.
Well, it's choice is yours. I mean, you're free to do whatever you want, and I don't judge anyone. They can, it's totally up to them, and there is an audience for every style out there. Um, if you want to do the intergender matches and you want to do them where you're both on equal footing and you both, you just walk across the ring and lock up, hey, feel free. If you want to be that guy that does some crazy, ridiculous, almost looks like you broke even a normal, a 6'2", 250-pound man in half, and you did it to a girl, and you think somehow that's going to get you more over, and maybe it does with that audience, but it's going to be a very small, very marginal audience, and you're limiting yourself in your appeal. So.
Do you think
which is fine? Again, I don't care.